Abraham was noted and loved by God because Abraham broke from the traditions of polytheism that were very common in his time. He affirmed the oneness of God, and in return for being a righteous man, God promised him honor and that he would be the father of many nations. So what we have now, evolving from Abraham, is the Mosaic tradition of the Jewish Bible, the Christian tradition of the New Testament and the Gospel of Christ, and finally the Abrahamic tradition of the Quran, or the revelation of God to Prophet Muhammad. There is no God but the one God of all creation.
The Abrahamic traditions in New York today are evident all around us, and I think understanding them, appreciating them, venerating them, helps us to understand not only ourselves, but those around us.
The Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition is what informs the United States.
Jews, Christians, and Muslims, as I've always tried to tell people, do not have to be antagonists. These traditions essentially established the idea of the unity and the oneness of God, and the unity and the oneness in a very real way of the human family. I want young people to understand not only that there is a great deal of common substance in what was revealed to the prophet Abraham, that as it's translated into these three great religions.
I think it's very important for their minds to be open and to understand the largeness of these traditions that I'm sure many of their cohorts know little about. It helps them to understand their place in the world, culturally and spiritually, but also to understand their relationship to one another.
You're in New York City, and New York City is the quintessential place for immigrants. Abraham was an immigrant. Like all immigrants, when he ran into trouble, he reached back to his roots. Immigrants in New York City, in times of trouble, invoke the past, yet build a future in their new home.
This wonderful city of ours, there's so much diversity, but so much of it just passes us by. And understanding this will help us relate and help those around us relate.
Architecture is really the physical space that we inhabit as human beings. And in the Bible and in the Quran, you have examples of spaces that people come to worship the Almighty.
You look at the United Nations building, it almost takes you back in the modern world to a cathedral or a church. The Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building, these are reminiscent of minarets and towers.
Food is very important. It comes with national overtones as well as religious.
From the Passover feast to the Last Supper to the celebration of the end of each day during the month of Ramadan, we see the centrality of food as something that binds the community.
When we break bread together, we're doing something very elemental and sharing our humanity.
There are very specific rules, whether it's kosher in the Jewish faith or it's halal in Islam, because a lot of this is religion and a lot of it is simply tradition.
We might think that milkshakes and potato chips and burgers and fries are the things that sustain humankind, but before all that came, you had the simple foods in their natural states that were revealed and created and then talked about in the holy text of these religions.
How could you eat those latkes? It was December, I was hanging with my middle, eating gelt and spinning up some dreidel. Tried to win, but I was not so nimble. I got the nuns and she got all the gimbals. It was my old tour that I was hearing as my coins continued disappearing. Suddenly my nose starts to twitching. I knew my mom was frying a potato.
We're at Comics in New York City for the 6th annual Arab American Comedy Festival.
And all the American chains are in the Middle East. The one American chain not there, and it makes sense when you think it through, Target. Because nobody wants a bullseye and the word Target on the front of their store.
I think it's very important that we know how we share each other's culture without even recognizing it.
This is one of the most remarkable objects in the museum in terms of displaying intercultural relationships. It's a baptismal font, which in many ways is typical of the 1300s. So we have in one object, available right here in New York City, the perfect expression of Hispano-Islamic culture, design, and I might say also a record of the three religions coexisting in medieval Spain: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
The written word, the scriptures, just look at the new Islamic wing at the Met and see how important the written word is. Just the Kufic script is a major design motif in art. In fact, it's probably the most important example of written word.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
The oral tradition is as important or more important than it was. In the age of internet and visual stimulus, we've forgotten so much about the power of the spoken word. Spoken and sung, chanted, all of that is very important. It feeds all the senses.
God's been so good. He's been just that good.
We see in architecture, in food, and in humor, the fine arts, the performing arts, the influence of godliness, the influence of the understanding of the sacred as pervading all aspects of human culture and human life.
We need to know who we are in order to know what we're doing here, to use our time well.
Just that good.
So what we should do as the children of Abraham is recognize that we live in a world for sharing of that rich treasure chest of revealed truth and revealed beauty.
God's been so good. He's been just that good. Oh, God's been so good.